reality.
Yeah. And it's almost inconsequential why she died. I mean, we never find out. And there are various theories to it, but it almost becomes immaterial.
It does, exactly. Immaterial, like in the literal sense. Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to move away from we were discussing your work, but I wanted to ask a more general question, perhaps, which is that when, as a filmmaker or as writers, you're exploring the theme of love and violence, whether you set out to do it intentionally or not, what sort of a role does your conscious morality play in the process? Is it a marker? Is it a guide? Or can it also sometimes be a hindrance? This question of what should or should not be portrayed, the sort of responsibility of art, so to say. Either of you.
First of all, I just want to sort of, just completely express my admiration for Atish's ability to look at language and words and tease out meanings that were coined way back in history in a different world, but it gives us a clue to some of the fundamental impulses. What he said about virility, veer, I just wanted to say that as a child with the Bengali and Sanskrit literature, we grew up with a term called Veer Bhogya Vasundhara. It's completely representative of what it means. Veer Bhogya means what the virile man consumes, Bhog. And Vasundhara means Vasu, the material world, and the
receptacle of material
the holder
things.
of the material. So it's a fantastic concept. Vasundhara probably is an older
It's also
concept.
a synonym for the earth. Yeah.
Exactly. If you believe Karen Armstrong and Joseph Campbell and all that, Vasundhara probably is the older concept, the mother concept. And the virile man is saying, now I'm here to consume you and use you as a resource. So it's like, I just got a clue from what you were saying that many of our answers and much of our histories are encoded in these small words in the older languages. Anyway, sorry. So today I got a new clue to certain
There's a
things.
great book called The Vocabulary of Indo-European Institutions, a French book. Amazing.
Translation?
Maybe not. Well, I'm sure in academic circles there would be.
But there are lots of other books on the subject as
But
well.
this is, that's the title sounds just completely, germane to what we are discussing. It's about wheat, it's about land, it's about consuming and consumption. Sorry, anyway, to get back to what you were asking. I don't know. Most of my films, I've just made 4 or 5, have been about class. Because that's what consumed me and obsessed me as a watcher. I've only recently I'm growing up to gender.
Maybe you can answer that question in terms of what kind of a role
morality
morality plays overall.
I will. So I'm not a very objective or a very practiced person when commenting on gender, because I'm just really growing up into it over the last 3-4 years. And I don't think morality plays any role. I think conscience does. I don't know what morality is as a permanent value, because it will keep changing. Because it's essentially a codification of certain precepts to preserve status quo. That's what morality is.
But isn't conscience also something that grows out of morality? Can we claim that our
I don't believe it.
Yeah?
I don't believe it. I believe conscience is something. The other day, I just dragged my 4-year-old forcibly. She was not eating, so I just dragged her away. And when I did that, I realized that she didn't have the power to resist me. And that's the only reason I was dragging her. She was an adult in a small body. And I felt a lot of remorse. I call that conscience, because nobody had conditioned me for that emotion. I believe that we have something called conscience, which is of its own.
Which can be stand completely independently of conditioning?
Which can stand independent of conditioning.
Also, you know, in creating a fictional work or a work of the imagination, you're in a sense creating a closed circle. You're creating a world of a private morality. Like people have relationships to one another, but
is it also parallel morality?
Well, no, not necessarily, but like I would not be thinking of not only would I not be thinking of an external morality that would be trying to interfere with my fictional circle, I probably wouldn't be thinking of nothing in the outside world can make a work of fiction or a work of the imagination, if it doesn't work on its own terms, it doesn't work, you know. So these questions of morality or whatever.
No, I was talking about your own struggle with when you're writing a book, and because conscience
it wouldn't happen that way, is what I'm trying to tell you. It's like something would take root in your imagination, and in my opinion, it's the imagination is kind of an amoral thing. It deals with moral questions in a creative and artistic way, and sometimes people feel that that's a more profound way of dealing with them than dealing with it as a moral exercise. But the process that you're describing doesn't ever happen. Something takes root, a world emerges, things happen within that world, and there's no like Atish ex machina, you know?
Yeah.
Do you think there's a conscience? Do you think what I'm saying has got maybe?
I think there's sensibility. I think that would be like a word like, and the more you enrich or deepen that sensibility, I think that world becomes a kind of can have a higher morality than the morality of
sure.
Of
as long as you arrive at that morality and not, don't impose it on. I mean, every work has is inherently political, is inherently moralistic. But as long as it's an organic morality and organic politics, I guess that's what you are trying to say.
I think in that business of realization, in the business of striving after some kind of truth, a moral objective is achieved.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I mean, like with love and violence, I guess morality also is a very wide concept. I mean, I guess we can all, and conscience, we can all, I don't know if he's around, but you know what? I don't know how much time we have, but, sorry? I can't hear you. I don't know. Okay, I don't know what, but before we open the house up to questions, I'm going to ask you guys to, if Hanif is around him as well, to react to these lines by, Oscar Wilde had written a poem called The Ballad of the Reading Gaol, and all the while that I was thinking about this session, these lines kept coming back to me. And all men kill the thing they love, by all let this be heard. Some do it with a bitter look, some with a flattering word. The coward does it with a kiss, the brave man with a sword. These are lines I'd read when I was a kid. They've come back to me at various points in various different contexts, and definitely were at the back of my mind when I was thinking about this session. So I was hoping to ask you guys to react to these lines and tell me what you make of them.
I think Oscar Wilde in Reading Jail had definitely had an experience of love that had made him it had destroyed his sense of humor, which was always the thing. He'd always felt he could laugh at everything, and then he soon realized he could laugh at nothing. And I think that he had like a unique experience of what we talked about earlier, of the way in which there is in the area of romantic love like a system of power, and in the case of Oscar Wilde, it had become wildly abused. And so I think that I mean, as far as that essential mechanism goes between love and a kind of killing or a kind of violence, I think it exists.
Fair enough. What about you? What do you make of these lines?
I've just encountered them. I'm challenged in terms of poetry. My wife's a great reader of poetry, and the stuff of our life for the last 30 years has been poetry. And I've been influenced by her, and that's the only reason that I'm kind of pretend to understand poetry. I think you need to get into words a little more, which is why I was looking for cues from you when she read those lines. To me, these lines sound self-obsessed. And to me, these lines sound slightly self-pitying. And it kind of brings out the condition that when we talk about anything like love, sex, or something like that, this panel, as we were talking, is representative. We are talking about sex and love, violence, sex, or whatever. And half of humanity that engages in that act is absent from this panel. You are a moderator, so you won't come in with your ideas and all that.
You've been resourcified.
Yeah.
I have been resourcified. I have willingly been
You have to
resourcified.
resourcify. But 3 of us are men. And that points to this self-obsession that we have gotten into, is the fact that suppose this were a panel on the atrocities of love and sex. Suppose this were a panel on rape. Suppose this were a panel on injustice. Probably we will have a woman on stage. And when we do not discuss the rupture in the system, but we discuss the system, we cut out 50%. And it may not be women. No, that's not why I said it. No, that's not why I said it. It may not be women. It may be the untouchable. It may be the Adivasi. It may be the Muslim. It may be anybody who is in a place which is not defined by him or her, who's been bracketed into it. So when you kind of write the constitution, you don't call them. When you want to amend the constitution, you call them, okay, come. We are discussing rebellion. We are discussing changing the system. Now you come in. So you don't give them the respect of canonizing the law. You give them the position of perpetual rebellion. These lines are about that. These lines are about owning that sphere to yourself and forgetting everything else. That's what I feel. And to even get to a better place on this discussion, we need to forget this self-obsession. That's what I meant. Sorry.
No, that's a very interesting interpretation of these lines. I don't know if Hanif is with us at all. Is he? Hanif? Final call? No. Okay, so we can wrap with that and see. I suppose, yeah. I mean, I guess what you meant was the context keeps changing, but there's always that 50% that's left out. Yeah. Can we, if there are any questions in the house at all?
I think we have time for about just 3 questions. So quickly, I'm going to pass the mic around.
Irrespective of how long the answers are.
Hi. Since the topic is love and violence. So if one film came to my mind was Martin Scorsese's Raging Bull, where Jake LaMotta, he's a boxer, right? So his job is to be violent. His job is to be fierce. His job is to be confident with his violence. He's supposed to be in his violence. But when he takes that into his personal life, to his wife, he beats up his wife. And when I saw the film, I sympathized with LaMotta and not his wife, because maybe there's something wrong with me, but yeah. So, because he can't differentiate between the violence that is in the ring and the love that is in the house. So all he knows is that I have to, if I want to be on top of a situation, I have to use my fists. And I have to dominate a situation through my physical strength. The same way he does in the ring. Like, he refuses to go down in front of anyone. Like, as a male, or maybe just as a boxer. He refuses to go down, like for example, when he loses to Sugar Ray Robinson in the film. And he goes up to him and says, because he's not knocked out, he just goes up to him and says, you never got me down. Like, he does that because he wants that sense of dominance. Maybe that's why the violence comes inside the love. Because when his wife describes someone else as cute, he loses his mind. He flips his lid. Like, how can she think of someone like that? Am I not supposed to be her love? Yeah, exactly. So my question is that when is it fair that sometimes violence in love is justified? Like in that situation, because it's not exactly his fault. So whose fault is it? To anyone.
You palming that off onto me, forget it, man. If you mean physical violence, no. No, not justified.
You had a very good point. You had your own answer in your question. He is using violence to please people. You see, he's offering violence as entertainment. A society that consumes violence as entertainment. And believe me, we are that. We are in that shit, buddy. We have become a society that consumes regular violence as a means of entertainment, is condemned to bring it inside its house and have a bruised, black-eyed population for a long time. And that's what we are.
Hi, my question is for Mr. Dibakar Banerjee. You spoke about class and you boiled down violence to an extremely, to class particularly. You said that if someone is frustrated, his possession is going to come out on his girlfriend or his partner. Would you say that it's only narrowed down to one section of class? Would you not say that violence is perpetuated in, let's say, a high end of society, or like Mr. Ash said, that it's not only about physical violence, it's also about the power dynamics in a relationship. So I want to know if you only boil it down to the class perspective.
No, I said that class violence is a species of violence. Those were my words. There are many species. And what he said, there are many. I was just saying that I personally was interested in class violence for a long time. And now as I'm getting into gender, over the last 2-3 years, other sorts of violences are becoming clearer to me. But I have to study them, I have to learn about them a little more, and he would be the right person because he's kind of gotten into it, because I heard him talk about his book and it's got a lot of things which I would need to study. So no, definitely not. It's just a species.